The story of Ruth is a narrative found in the Old Testament of the Bible, specifically in the book of Ruth. The story revolves around several key characters, with Ruth being the central figure. Ruth's simple, yet powerful story teaches us about God's love and the importance of staying true to our beliefs. Ruth's humble journey from being a widow in a foreign land to becoming an important part of Jesus Christ's family tree shows how her decisions and character had a big effect. Her story shows how God can use ordinary people to make amazing things happen. Her life not only influenced Israel's history, but also played a part in forming the basis of Christianity. Ruth's legacy goes beyond her time, showing that anyone, no matter where they come from, can be part of God's plan. The events of the story take place during the time of the Judges in Israel, a period of relative instability and moral decline. There was a man named Elimelech. He lived in Bethlehem with his wife Naomi and their 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. But sadly, a famine hit the land, and there wasn't enough food. Now Elimelech had to decide what to do for his family, so he chose to move them to Moab, a nearby place, hoping they could find more food and have a better life. This decision was made because they were facing really tough times, and Elimelech wanted to make sure his family had what they needed. So, moving to Moab was their way of dealing with the hard challenges. While they were in Moab, the family faced a tragedy. Elimelech, the head of the family, passed away, making Naomi a widow, and after that, the 2 sons Mahlon and Chilion got married to Moabite women Ruth and Orpah. But unfortunately, their marriages didn't last long because both sons also passed away unexpectedly. This series of losses left Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah as widows, and they had to deal with an uncertain future in a place that wasn't their home. In the beginning of Ruth's story, important themes like losing loved ones, being in a new place, and the difficulties widowed women face are introduced. The story shows us how these women handle their feelings and deal with the challenges of living in a different culture. The background of the story sets the stage for Ruth to make a very important choice to stay loyal to Naomi. This choice really changes the story. It brings unexpected good things in the fields of Bethlehem. After facing difficult times, and when things get better in Bethlehem, Naomi decided to go back to her home country, as she wanted to reconnect with her roots, her people, and her faith. It's a touching part of the story because Naomi had to face difficulties when going back home, not only because she was a widow, but also because she had to help her widowed daughters-in-law. But when Naomi told her daughters-in-law to stay in Moab, Orpah decided to stay there. This choice made sense because moving to a new place, especially a different country, was hard and uncertain. Orpah's choice shows how tough life was for widowed women at that time. However, Ruth's answer to Naomi is really important and meaningful. Book of Ruth, chapter 1, verses 16 to 17. She said, "Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God." Ruth saying these words is a very important part of the story. This shows how much Ruth cared about Naomi, and it's a big sign of her loyalty and commitment. Ruth was ready to leave her own home and beliefs to start a new life with Naomi and worship the God of Israel. It sets the stage for what happened next in Bethlehem. Her words aren't just about sticking with Naomi, they also show she's ready to embrace a new way of life and a new faith. When Ruth and Naomi reached Bethlehem and saw how tough the situation was, Ruth decided to do something about it. She started picking up leftover crops from the fields after the harvest, which is called gleaning. This was a way for poor and widowed people to get some food. Ruth doing this tough job shows how determined she was to help herself and Naomi. Ruth started picking crops in the fields that belonged to Boaz, who was a rich relative of Naomi's late husband. However, it was not just a coincidence. Boaz being wealthy is important for what happens next in the story. Boaz is a key person in the story, as he was not just a possible helper for the family, but he also appreciated Ruth's character and hard work. Ruth's good actions and her loyalty to Naomi made her stand out to Boaz. In the story, Boaz being a relative is very important. He has a special role called a kinsman redeemer, which is a big deal in the rules of Israelite law. A kinsman redeemer is like a close family helper who steps in when someone in the family is having a hard time. This could mean marrying a widow to keep the family going, or buying back land that was sold because of money problems. Naomi's instructions to Ruth on how to meet with Boaz in the field are found in the book of Ruth, specifically in book of Ruth, chapter 3, verses 1 to 5. Naomi realized the significance of Boaz as a potential kinsman redeemer. In light of this, she came up with a plan to secure a favorable outcome for Ruth and herself. She made a plan for Ruth to meet Boaz at the threshing floor, a spot connected to farming events and celebrations. Naomi told Ruth to get cleaned up and put on nice clothes. She advised her to go to the place where Boaz was working, watch where he sleeps, and wait until he finishes eating and drinking, which was likely a time of relaxation and potentially a more conducive moment for their interaction. Then, Naomi suggested Ruth uncover Boaz's feet and lie down. These actions were part of a plan to get Boaz's attention and potentially secure his protection as a kinsman redeemer. Ruth courageously followed the plan. What she did at the threshing floor proves how obedient and brave she was. Ruth's words to Boaz are recorded in the book of Ruth, where she says, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer." It's like asking for protection, and for Boaz to act as the kinsman redeemer, looking out for her. It shows Ruth bravely talking to Boaz and saying she's open to the idea of levirate marriage or redemption, following the customs of that time. Boaz recognizes that Ruth is a good person, and he understands the importance of her decision to come to him for protection. In Ruth 3, verses 10 to 11, NIV, Boaz responds to Ruth saying, "The Lord bless you, my daughter. This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character." His reply shows that he admires her goodness and acknowledges her appeal for protection. Not only that, he also promises to fulfill the responsibilities of being the kinsman redeemer. However, the story gets more interesting when we learn that there's another relative who could help out even more. This part of Ruth's story brings in some tension and takes the story in a direction where the themes of loyalty, hard work, and the complexities of family relationships will be further explored. Boaz followed the rules of Israelite law and the kinsman redeemer principles. He took the responsible step of talking to the relative who was even closer in line for helping out. Boaz asked the other relative if he wanted to step in and help the family. The proposal included the idea of marrying Ruth to make sure the family continues and keeps its inheritance. By giving this opportunity to the other relative, Boaz showed that he wanted to be fair and follow the legal rules. But things got interesting in the story when the closer relative said no to the offer. The text doesn't say why he refused, but his decision allowed Boaz to step in and take on the role of the kinsman redeemer. Boaz took the chance when the other relative said no, and he stepped up to help the family. He married Ruth, showing that he's committed not just to the legal duties, but also to Ruth personally. This marriage solved the family and legal issues that were important in the story. As the story goes on, Ruth and Boaz's marriage becomes a symbol of good things happening and blessings. Boaz, being a responsible and honest person, played a big part in making this beautiful story happen. After Ruth and Boaz get married, they had a son named Obed. His name, which means servant or worshipper, is important because he becomes a crucial part of the family tree that leads to King David and later on to Jesus Christ. The story follows the family line from Ruth and Boaz all the way to Jesus Christ, completing a circle of redemption and blessings. Ruth's journey shows how God's plan works through faithful people, connecting many generations. That's why Ruth's legacy is so important in the Bible, leaving a lasting mark on the whole story.